Hey everyone and welcome to another episode. It's been a while since we've dug inside Solar Rogue's codebase, so let's do that a little bit this week. Now, 2021 has been a pretty busy year for me, and I haven't had as much time as I would have liked to work on Solar Rogue, but I did manage to release version 1.0 this last December, and I think it went pretty well. There hasn't been too many crashes and anything, and one of the reasons is because I've been doing a lot of polish and bug fixings since maybe last summer. And also, during the holidays, I got to watch Space Game Junkies playing my game on stream, and it was a lot of fun. And one of the things that's really amazing about watching people playing your game is that you get to peek into a lot of things you just weren't expecting or stuff that you hadn't thought about yourself. And one of the things I noticed watching the stream was that a lot of people were really enjoying the random logs I added a while back.
And maybe a long-range scanner, because this short-range scanner is bollocks. Crew meeting today at 6 o'clock, you guys. On the agenda, why we should have no more babies on the ship, because if we're going to run out of cargo, we're definitely going to run out of crew quarters, so no more babies. Convert babies into missiles.
Now, up until now, these logs were pretty much just meaningless messages that I just put there to add a little bit of background story or some Easter eggs in the game. But from the beginning, I was hoping that eventually it would become a little bit more. I wanted these log messages to either give you hints about how to play the game, or maybe help you think about some stuff, or messages related to your current run. A little bit like the Oracle in NetHack, which can give you completely bonkers advice, but sometimes also give you really important hints about how the game is played. So, in the last few weeks, I implemented these meaningful random log messages and conditions, and I thought I could take you through the process of the creation of these random log messages. So, for the random log message, it all starts with my log window, which, as you can see, is just a simple rich text label. And to control the content of this rich text label, in my HUD, I have this GD script called log system, and all this script really does is register to the global event onLogLine, and when this onLogLine callback is called, it'll receive a text, and this text will be animated and displayed in the rich text label. Now, one of the interesting things in this method is that I can choose to either send a single string of text, which, as you can see, is just going to add it to the list of lines to display, but it can also be of type dictionary, and then at that time, it's going to choose a random line to print. So this way, I can have a whole different set of text that I want to display, and the log is going to choose one at random. Now, you might be wondering why it's a dictionary instead of an array, and the idea is that I can specify a weight for each of the line so that I can have very rare, quips or funny lines that you'll only see if you play a long time and you see this line a lot. For example, when a ship is getting damaged, I have many different lines for specifying the amount of damage that was done, and some of these might be a little bit funny depending on some random factors and some random weights. Now, when I decided to add these random logs, I knew I wanted them to only appear when there was nothing else really going on. I didn't want random logs to appear during a combat. There's much more important messages appearing at that time. So, I decided to create a log system. So, in my main scene, I have all of those behavior or systems, and one of them that I created is the random log system. And this system, it basically listens to a couple of events, one of them being the onLogLine and the other one being the onPlayer turn. And basically what it does is with the onLogLine, it keeps track of when was the last time a line was displayed. And then it basically used two types of cooldown. The first cooldown is a 10-turn cooldown whenever a line was displayed, so that I'm never going to display a random log message just after another line was displayed. And the other one is a cooldown for when I displayed one of the random line, I want to make sure that I'm not going to display another one anytime soon. Then there's a base 0.001% chance that a random message is going to be displayed every time we step on the player turn. But then, to make sure that eventually a message is going to be displayed, every time a message is not displayed on the player turn, I increase the chance on the next turn. So this way I can guarantee there's going to be a message if nothing is happening, but I make sure that it doesn't happen too often. Now, at the top of the script, you can see I have this long dictionary of log choices that were the original implementation, where they're just basically random quips or like funny quotes from different movies or different science fiction tropes that I display randomly based on their weight here. The fun part I added is this gather conditional hints. And in this method, I add new log choices based on a bunch of different conditions that I check every time I want to display a log message. Initially, I was a little bit worried about performance because checking all of those conditions for I don't know how many dozens of new messages might be pretty expensive, and the last thing I want is a lag spike every time I want to just display a random log message. But after testing on mobile and a few other devices, it seems like for now the performance is not that bad, but I knew about it, so I already have a plan. If it ever gets too expensive, I'm thinking of separating these conditional hints into different buckets. For example, put very expensive checks in 3 or 4 different lists, and then I would just generate one of those lists randomly. So like this turn I choose list A, and the next time I choose list B, or the next time I choose list C, or something like that. This way I can still show all those log messages, but I spread the load a little bit by checking only part of them every time I want to display a message. And you can see that some of these things are pretty expensive. For example, I want to display a message when the player is running low on some ammos for the weapons he has equipped. But that means I have to not only check if the weapons he has equipped need ammo, but then I have to go through all the inventory in the player's ship and check to see if it has any of those ammos and how much there's left. And then if there isn't enough, I'm going to add this line to the list of things that can be displayed. Of course, this doesn't mean it's going to guarantee it's going to be displayed. It's still randomly based, but it has a small chance of telling you that maybe you should refill your weapons. I've also added messages specific to where the player is in his current game. For example, has he been to any of the side branches, or has he ever encountered like some other alien races? And if he has, then I can give him some information about those races. And I want to make sure he has encountered those races because I don't want to give him clues about something he hasn't seen in the game yet. But this was a little bit tricky to implement because I've never tracked anything the player does, really. So checking to see if he's been to a certain level or if he has seen a certain enemy, it was a little bit tricky to implement. Thankfully, the way I do things, the player always has a dictionary of stats and data that he carries around. So if I have access to the player, I can tag any attributes I want, and then I can validate those attributes. For example, I added this visiting that seen Jurg attribute into the player, so now I can check if the player has ever destroyed or seen a Jurg ship. The tricky part was figuring out a good place to tag this information. When the player is, for example, encountering a ship with his scanner, there's a couple of different places that this could happen, so it wasn't really easy to add it there. Another thing I was thinking is maybe add it only when the player has destroyed one of the enemy ship, but then that means adding little pieces of code a little bit everywhere in the code, so that was a little bit tricky, but I think in the end it's working pretty well and I'm pretty happy with the result. Now, I have other ideas for hints and tips I could add, but they're a little bit more complicated to implement, and I think it's already a pretty good first strike, so I released a recent update of Solo Rogue with this new feature inside. But if you haven't seen Solo Rogue, well, please check the link in the description below, maybe give it a wishlist, buy it, like it. That really helps me and maybe helps me keep working on making video game and making good content for you guys. And that's gonna be it for this week, so until next time, see you all, bye!